Okay, let's get started with the upholstery tutorial I promised everybody to go along with the bench I built. This is just going to be a pretty simple upholstery tutorial. We're not going to do anything too fancy, but it is going to look really good. What I'm going to start with, what everyone should start with, is a 1/2 inch thick MDF or plywood base. As you can see, I've got MDF here. Then I glued on top of that 3-inch thick foam padding, and there'll be links to the padding and the batting on top of that I've used on my website, so you can see exactly what I went with. So this is a pretty dense foam pad. It feels great when you sit on it. You're not going to feel the wood or anything underneath it, and it's not too stiff. You don't feel like you're sitting on a board. This padding is extra loft, or this batting is extra loft batting. You can also use high loft batting. You just want to make sure also with this that it's just thick enough to hold it up without it's going to take away some of the square shape that you have with the foam padding. So this batting just gives you that nice rounded professional upholstery look that you want to go with. So first I cut the padding to size, which is actually just a bread knife, a serrated bread knife, but if you have one of those fancy electric carving knives, even better. So I glued that down with some spray adhesive, and then I put the batting on top, and I attached that to the sides of the foam with the same spray adhesive. You don't need it on the top. I just put it on the sides to hold everything nicely in place. And then around on the corners, you just trim away the excess material. See, I've left it here on this one just to show you exactly what I did and make it easy. So this is glued down. You can see if I pull at it, it's not going to go anywhere really. So just pinch this and give it a cut down. That way you don't have a bunch of bulky stuff underneath your fabric making it look funky. So let me grab the fabric. So now that I have the fabric, I want to show you a little bit about that. But first I want to say that the batting also was cut level with the bottom of the MDF or plywood. You don't want it to wrap underneath the bench because it's just going to make it a little bit harder to attach this seat to your bench itself. You don't want it to be bumpy or lumpy underneath. So if we just have the fabric underneath, that gives it a nice cleaner look, better appearance. So make that batting level. With the fabric, I'm probably going to have about 1 inch to 1.5 inches stapled underneath. So I cut my fabric with that in mind. We are going to pull down a little bit, again, to give it a nice, clean, tight, kind of rounded edge appearance. So take that into account when you make your cuts. And then you also want to line up any patterns that you have so that it's centered. You don't want a line to look wavy or go across, because again, that's going to ruin the professional look that you're going for. So once you have everything cut and you know it's lined up perfectly, we are ready to flip this over. So I've got my fabric flipped down, pattern side down, and the bench seat is centered on the fabric. You want to use the patterns in your fabric to make sure everything's lined up. If you're just using a solid piece of fabric, of course, it's not going to matter as much unless you've got a grain, like lines through your solid pattern texturally. So if you've got a texture to your pattern or to your fabric, you're also going to want to make sure that that lines up properly with your bench. You're also going to want to iron any fabrics that need ironing before you do this, because just putting it on your bench isn't going to stretch those wrinkles out. They're still going to be there, so you need to iron beforehand. So we're going to start in the middle of all 4 sides. We're going to leave our corners to last. That lets us do a little bit of fine detail work with the corners and make them look a little bit better. And I'm just going to use my standard old-fashioned staple gun here. So let's get started. What I'm going to do is just pull a little bit, and what what you want to make sure is that you're pulling the same amount all the way around so it doesn't look puckered or strange. And you want to pull straight with the grain of the fabric. You don't want to pull to the side on accident. So let's just start in the middle here. So the good thing about using a staple gun to do your upholstery is if you don't like the way you've gotten a little section, you can always get those needle nose pliers out and pop the staples out and just doing a little adjustment and you are back in the game. So now I've got the long sides done. I've got this gap on the end, so I'm just going to leave that and do the sides. Okay, so I've got the edges all done. So now we're going to work on the corners. And what you're going to want to do is try to create a corner that doesn't look bunched up. That gives it a nice professional look. So it's going to be hard to show you here, but I think the best idea for this bench is to pull the middle of the corner tight, so the corner, and then take the excess fabric and kind of fold it on each side. So that it just kind of looks wrapped. And you don't want it too tight. You're going to want to cut away the excess fabric so you don't have it holding the seat off the bench too much. And then just finish your staples. So I've got the corners done. You're going to want to go back and make sure you've got a lot of staples across your fabric. You don't want any big gaps between the staples because I'm always afraid it's going to create a little bit of tug when you're sitting on the fabric and it's going to start ripping those spaces. So you want a good amount of staples to have an even hold on the fabric all the way around. And then trim away the excess fabric. Like I said, you don't want it to hold your bench too far off of your seat or it's going to leave weird gaps. And then the last thing you need to do is go back and hammer the staples in. For some reason, there's always just a little bit sticking out. So you want to hammer them all in.